Hi there, it's Callum Newman. I'm the editor of Australian Small Cap Investigator. Back in June, I attended a conference for junior mining companies called the Rising Resource Stars Conference. It's held every year and it's been going for a long time. At that conference, the main speaker was a fund manager and a trained geologist called Hedley Widdup. Last week, Hedley and I sat down to go over 12 stocks from that conference. That covered gold, nickel, lithium, and we talk about copper, all to do with, again, the resource sector in Australia and the most promising juniors. Now, here we are talking about one very specific stock. Here's Hedley Widdup.
I don't know that I saw this particular presentation. What's happening?
It's sort of across the country. They've got patches of ground in two interesting places. They've got one reasonably close to Mount Isa in Queensland, North Queensland, and they have a patch of ground just south of Bronzewing, I think it is, which is a fairly well-known gold mine in the West Australian goldfields. So sizable ground positions, both in such interesting places, and they have a reasonable size resource in Queensland. I don't think it's something that you can say will turn into a project without it changing itself, because the resource has been defined some time ago. So I think they know they need to make it bigger or to find something more high grade within it. But it's one of those situations that got plenty of smoke. They've got some really interesting targets south of Bronzewing, and that's a Northern Star ground position. So if anything was found there, there's a very logical mill for it to go into. And likewise, if you find something reasonable in the Mount Isa region, there is a number of players that I suspect might be happy to take it off your hands, or at the very least, it's a mining jurisdiction where you can build projects and know that you can get the services that you need. So they've got a resource, that's a start. They are drilling a number of things which they're geologically showing all the sniffs that you need, but at the moment they haven't quite cracked that one.
Now we got to everyone's favourite sector at the moment, lithium with essential metals. What are you, just in general, remember when the lithium thing bottomed out in like 2018 and the perception came through, it's everywhere. It's not that hard to find. What are your thoughts on lithium in general?
Yeah, so part of that is true. Lithium is a very, very common element. Like with anything, gold is very common, but it rarely concentrates in situations that are economic to extract the gold from. And the same is true of lithium. In fact, lithium is quite tricky metallurgically. So you not only need to find something which has got a reasonable enough grade, it needs to be something which you feel you can separate efficiently as well. And there are very few companies which have managed to find and define resources which have turned into mines. There's been loads and loads of intersections. So, there are people who are marching through that. The other thing which, particularly if you go back 4 or 5 years, there was this perception that to find lithium, all you need to do is find one of the common host rocks, which is a geological rock called a pegmatite, which is a form of intrusion, but it tends to come off of the side of a larger intrusion, and it tends to be quite late in the intrusive history. But pegmatites ain't pegmatites. You need to have a specific sort, and you need to make sure that the chemistry is right to put the lithium minerals in there in the first place. So just finding a pegmatite doesn't necessarily get you over the line. Could find all sorts of other interesting things. Pegmatites poor analogy. I was going to say it's like the fatberg of a shower. It's where all the really quirky stuff ends up. Maybe it's sort of the same. All the chemicals coming out of an intrusion end up in the pegmatites coming off the sides, and lithium is one of those, right?
And in terms of essential metals, then,
So in terms of essential metals, one final thing on lithium, and it's the market rather than the geology. I've been warned constantly by people who've mentored me in my investing sort of career. Try to avoid commodities which are somewhere between a 3 and a 5 year high, because mineral commodities can spike very quickly. And when they do, they produce very substantial producer margins. And the issue is that producer margins usually don't last very long, either because costs go up rapidly to meet it, or the commodity price finds a weakness as more supply comes to market. And lithium's been a very interesting one, because it had a massive spike in 2017-18, came crashing back to earth, and Pilbara Minerals, which was, the darling of the Pilbara, the darling of the Australian market, had built itself into a miner, then had a near-death experience, then built itself back into a miner again. And this commodity roller coaster has been such a nightmare for them. So what long-term projection can you make about lithium price? I don't know, but making a projection from this point when prices are at absolute record highs tends to be a brave call. So, looking at anything in lithium at the moment, you need to take that on as a risk. Now, Essential, I think, is an interesting one because, and they make this point very loudly themselves, they have a resource. It's definitely a relevant resource in that it seems to have enough grade and size and metallurgy to it that would make it viable at some lithium price and current lithium prices for sure. And they haven't sold their offtake. All of the producers are selling lithium to customers who've basically paid for the privilege of having the offtake, either entirely or partially at the very least. And Essential has completely unencumbered lithium in the ground. So if they were to develop, they could sell it to anyone. And I think
that has the same kick at the moment, though, or do you feel? The end user, obviously, but for a while there, the lithium stocks were getting re-rated as they announced these kind of deals. I'm not 100% sure it's quite the same market anymore. What do you think?
Well,
or does it matter long term as long as they get it?
So if me and you, Cal, wanted to be gold miners, we'd go out with a pick and a shovel and a pan, and we could find a little bit of gold and we could sell it in the street. And I could absolutely guarantee you the price you would get would be exceptionally close to the gold spot price, which is globally known and absolutely transparent and very, 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 very liquid. Selling lithium is different to that because gold is a saleable product straight out of the ground. There's very little refining which is required. You can take it to absolute purity by selling it to a refinery, but you don't give away much in terms of value. So that upgrading is exceptionally slight in terms of price and purity. Lithium, however, is not something which you take out of the ground and can use instantly in a battery. It needs substantial processing off the back of that. And the quality of what you take out of the ground has a great deal to do with the price that you can receive and its usability as it goes through the processing plant. So if it's too fine grained, some of that might blow through the processing plant and end up not getting used at all and can't be paid for that. Some of it might have some impurities associated with it, whether that's iron or anything else, salt that comes from your processed water, which can cause problems as it gets purified down the track. So there's all sorts of things which might give or take from the price that you receive. But then what you sell into an offtake today is going to dictate the terms which you take for the next 12, 24, 36 months. And oftentimes you don't know what an offtake agreement is if you're an equity investor in a company. Selling into the spot market, which is something that Pilbara has pioneered by selling cargoes via an auction on a regular basis, is starting to approximate a spot market. But there's still no spot market for those for the ex-mine product of lithium mines, which means that pricing a company on the basis of what you think they'll be able to sell their product for is still going to be a bit of a guess. It's nowhere near what it would be for gold. Now, that's not uncommon in mining investing at all. It's just something that you see exploration companies being valued quite highly, and that is an area where you have to say that there's risk. So that applies to all lithium companies, and being unencumbered as far as offtake goes is good. It means you've got a bit to play with and it might be a funding avenue for you, but at the same time you still don't know what price you're going to be able to sell your lithium for.
It's quite a obscure market, lithium, in that sense. It's because most of the refining's in China too, right?
A great deal of it, and it's an interesting market in that there are not a great deal of players in it. You want to sell copper concentrate, there's tens of more places you can sell it and trade it, whereas lithium tends to, be pointed in one direction, and that's towards the end users. They want to have control of it, and understandably. But in a small market where there's less players, it changes the dynamics of pricing ability as well.
Well, we definitely need you for rare earth.
Well, there you go. That was Hedley and I chatting about one of the stocks from the Resource Rising Stars Conference in Queensland. Now, that full conversation went for a full hour, and we covered a lot more material around battery minerals and other stocks in that space on the ASX. That's bonus content for you when you become a subscriber to Australian Small Cap Investigator. You can click on the link below this video to take a trial period, and you've got 30 days to decide if it's for you. Otherwise, you can get a full refund. And of course, the conversation with Hedley is included with that, regardless of what you decide to do. So I hope you give it a go. Every month I release an issue on what I think is the most exciting small cap on the ASX. Sometimes I do more than one. So if you're interested in investing in small cap stocks on the ASX, give ASI a go. And I look forward to seeing you become a member soon. Goodbye.